Just Want This Done Divorce podcast. Today, country's nicest guy filed to end his 10-year marriage, no prenup, an old affair, and a kid born to another woman 1 week before the wedding. A rock and roll legend who got married on stage during his own concert is now on divorce number 3, lucky number 3, and his wife's filing lists intangible assets, which is lawyer speak for his back catalog. And a former NBA MVP says his wife faked a pregnancy to trick him into getting married. 3 musicians, an athlete, and a question nobody asks until it's too late. Who owns the music after the dance stops? Welcome to I Just Want This Done, not just another boring divorce lawyer podcast. All right, with you as always. What's up, Rahul? How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm awesome. With me as always, the great Rahul Iyer. And I am Rayford Dalton Palmer. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here. We're rocking and rolling. We had a great show last time, Rahul, with Anne Marie, the director of the movie You're Dating a Narcissist. And if you haven't seen that show, go back and see it. It's really interesting because we talk about the filmmaking process, but then we get into narcissism itself and how it's kind of permeating our culture. And so it's a great show. To check it out if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get into this show. So it's late. We're late June now while we're recording this. This will probably drop on the July 4th weekend. So be careful with the fireworks, folks. Be careful out there. Okay.
You don't want to lose fingers.
Yeah. Watch your fingers. Like light fuse and get away is what they say. So we've got summer parenting schedules, the summer vacations. Be nice to your kids out there. Let's not fight over the parenting schedule if we can avoid it. And exchange logistics can be a hassle. But put the child top of mind and don't worry. It's not your parenting time. It's their parenting time with you. So keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to always mention the sponsor of the show is STG Divorce Law. We help smart, successful people divorce in Chicagoland. And we've got a new office in Lake Forest, Illinois, with offices also all over Chicagoland. And Rahul and I both work for the law firm. If you need to check us out, we are at stglawfirm.com. That's stglawfirm.com, or search STG Divorce Law, and you will find us easily on the internet. And thank you also goes to my book, I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds, available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all great ebooks are sold. Rahul gets disappointed if I don't say that.
Gotta know where it's sold.
You gotta know where you can find it, right? And this is a copy of the soft cover, but check it out. It is the divorce guide, still a bestseller after 4 or 5 years. Almost 10,000 copies sold. They can't all be wrong, folks. Check it out. And if you like audiobooks, it's on Audible, and I did the narration myself. Okay, we got a few really interesting stories today. This show is fully loaded. Jelly Roll and Bunny XO, they're a divorce story with them. Dwight Howard's faked her fertility bombshell. Jack White's 3rd divorce. I guess he can't figure out how to keep him or pick him. Tess Daly and Vernon Kay's British, very amicable goodbye after 23 years. And then a deep dive that everybody with a side hustle should hear about. What happens to copyrights, royalties, a creative business when the marriage ends? This applies to really any business, but we're going to specifically talk about creative businesses. And also, we got to end it with a new dating trend called goblintimacy. And Rahul will be talking about that. So let's get right into it. The Jenny Roll and Bunny XO, they have real names too, folks. Don't worry. Divorce. This is pretty juicy. Jelly Roll, real name Jason Bradley DeFord. Okay. Country/rap superstar. Now, something Rahul and I talked about before the show is somebody mentioned he's the country's nicest guy. We said that at the beginning of the show. And we actually Rahul looked it up because he wasn't sure. And sure enough, it said he's considered to be country's nicest guy.
It's him and Post Malone.
And Post, which he says is his buddy. Now, do you think of either of those guys as country singers?
You know, it's like the line of what country music is really sort of changed. It's like blended into all these different genres now, where it's like very poppy, but it's still country. But then you have the true country, where you have,
banjos and whatnot.
Exactly. Blake
Dolly
Shelton,
Parton.
Dolly Parton, true country music. And then you have Post Malone, who is also country music. So it feels like those are
I
different genres,
I just don't get Post Malone in the country
or
thing, but
Jelly Roll for that matter.
Jelly Roll, right? Okay, so he was
Mr.
married
and
to
Mrs. Roll.
Mr. and Mrs. Roll. Yeah, actually, she did take his last name. Bunny XO, aka Alyssa DeFord, took his last name. She is the Dumb Blonde podcast host and social media personality. Okay, haven't seen the show. Married August 2016. He listed date of separation May 9th, 2026. Filed in Tennessee on May 18th. 10-year marriage. They met in 2015 before his fame. Relationship turned romantic the year before the wedding. Cited irreconcilable differences, kind of like you see a lot. Sources say split is mutual and being handled privately. The marriage was turbulent. And folks, if you see these folks, let's see if I can find a picture. If you don't know them, okay, we're going to share the screen because we know you guys we'll give you a reason to watch the show. Okay. Here, check this out. All right. If you don't if you don't know these two, first of all, it turns out he was in prison before, right, Rahul? I think
Yeah.
we
Yep,
as in the
he
story.
was. Yep, he was.
Yeah, so it looks like a lovely gentleman you don't want to run into on a dark night in an alley. And Bunny looks like somebody who would be named Bunny. So turbulent, shocking to say. It's been a turbulent relationship, and they ended their marriage. So I'm going to stop sharing, but here, okay. So the apparently discussions about Bunny's career goals became more difficult, Rahul, as Jelly's fame grew. Eventually, they realized they wanted very different futures. Now, Rahul, we have some, there's some scoop about Bunny XO's past. So it turns out Bunny was like an adult film porn star, right? Yeah. She was in adult entertainment industry, code name. So she apparently was considering a return, code name OnlyFans is my guess.
Right.
And my guess, rampant and reckless speculation being engaged to by us, just a guess. A quote from an insider is, quote, this is from the Why Entertainment story, link in the show notes. Bunny started seriously considering a return, and that created real tension, one source explained. She wasn't talking about her past anymore. She was talking about her future. And she was proud. Oh, there's another quote. She was always proud of where she came from. For Bunny, this wasn't about controversy. It was about business, freedom, and doing something she understood.
You're living in the past, man. Yeah.
Not hard to understand the porn business, I guess, if you've been in it. So still, Jelly Roll reportedly, this is the story now I'm quoting, Jelly Roll reportedly struggled with the potential impact on his own career, apparently his country music career. Nobody was judging anyone, a separate source noted. The issue wasn't morality. The issue was compatibility, Rahul.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped seeing the same picture when they looked ahead. Makes me think of the look at this photograph, for those Nickelback fans out there. Close friends of the pair revealed the infamous Mother's Day fight between them was the final straw. Now, this is an important safety tip for those of you who have a marriage that might be a little stressed. And I'm going to tell you the story and then we'll touch on the safety tip. While the heated argument didn't immediately end their marriage, it, quote, exposed problems that had been building for a long time. The real story is they wanted different lives. It turned out that in the argument on Mother's Day, here's a quote from her on her own podcast, June 18th, of the Dumb Blonde podcast. I looked at him and said, this is her saying, this is Bunny's quote. I looked at him and said, well, then file the effing divorce papers, she recalled. And in our relationship, this is the one cardinal thing you don't say, even though my husband said it numerous times, because he's the runner. Does that mean running away, we're not sure. But when I say it, it holds weight because I'm not the type of person who says what I don't mean. Here's the safety tip. He took her seriously. So, shortly after the argument, Bunny, quote, packed a bag and left, and the two didn't speak for weeks. He filed. He called the bluff. So she got what she asked for. She said, file the papers. And
yep. Be careful what you wish for.
He filed the papers. Yeah. So, that's the safety tip is watch out. You may get what you wish for. Mm-hmm. So it says, we got emotional. He ended up doing, this is her quote. He was so mad. We were so emotional. He ended up doing exactly what I told him to do and filed the papers. And another story, she said she doesn't want the divorce, or it was not mutual. Um,
Hmm.
and then here's the real fun twist on this. Oh, by the way, no prenup, Rahul.
No
So,
prenup.
no.
And he wasn't.
We
He
want
was.
prenup. We want prenup.
Yeah.
He wasn't Jelly Roll 10 years ago.
No. He was
Just a regular role.
Mr. DeFord.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we go. No prenup. And he built his fortune since then, right? And
Right.
so, but here, what's the twist on this, folks? It's Bunny announced on her podcast. This is again the Y Entertainment story. We have several links in there for other stories, but this one it's got a lot of material. She announced on her podcast that she and Jelly Roll are having a baby together.
Upgraded
that's not what we
girl.
want.
Rock.
Hold on, we get the right.
Well,
sound
that
effect
works
here.
too.
Brother.
Yeah.
Brother.
Oh, that's not good. Well, congratulations to them, sort of. But then you get the
Brother.
kind of a combination feeling on that one. Like that's not. You get the ick, as the kids say. So she's having a baby together, and you guys are going to be shocked to hear this. This is a quote from Bunny. But we're still having a baby. We're still having a baby, guys. We're still having a baby together. This is her saying this. We've had the most, quote, so we've been the most unconventional couple that you guys have ever encountered. And she announced they're going to co-parent together. Now, get this. It's through a surrogate because they had trouble conceiving. So this is all in the stories. So now that raises a number of interesting questions, right? So we'll get to the wealth issue and the prenup issue, but let's start with the child issues here.
But also before that, he had a child right before they got married, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
So right before they get married, when they're supposed to be dating, he has a child with another woman out of wedlock, and it was like cheating on her, I guess, and had this baby. Now, they both say mutually this past weekend before we recorded that there was no cheating involved. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of cheating and timing. So
Right.
in any event, it's goofy, but they're trying to proceed with this amicably. And he filed a no-fault divorce. In Tennessee, you can file a fault-based divorce. In Illinois, we've told you before on the show, there's no fault in Illinois.
Right.
But in other states, especially in the South, where they're still more conservative, fault is permitted, and fault, like infidelity, can affect certain parts of a divorce settlement or court judgment. In Tennessee, we did a little quick homework. We're not Tennessee lawyers. This is not legal advice. None of the show is. But in Tennessee, marital misconduct can affect maintenance, or what is known as alimony. So it could have an impact, but they're not proceeding along on that route in this case.
Right.
So, yeah, 1 week before the wedding, Jelly Roll has a son with another woman. That's just lovely. His career blew up during the marriage. His music catalog, publishing, the touring
Very good
business.
musician. Incredible singer.
Yeah, he's done very well for himself. And here's a couple of the financial points that come into play here. The lead story the next thing to talk about is the timing of the wealth, because that's critical, right? So because he built this during the marriage, this is all marital property subject to division, and Bunny's going to get essentially an equitable share, or think half of whatever these assets are. And we'll talk in more detail about how you can deal with that with something like music later in the show. But property acquired by either spouse during the marriage is presumed marital property in Illinois, and I'm guessing the law is similar in Tennessee.
Comparable. Yep.
And that's what we're going to talk about in our deep dive later, because we have all these music catalog things coming up in today's show. So no prenup. The fortune's built mid-marriage. I'm guessing Bunny probably had more to her name when they got married, although I don't know that. He had not much at all. If the reporting is accurate and there's no prenup, this is a cautionary tale we talk about all the time, which is why
We want prenup. We want prenup.
we have our favorite little clip there. So
Even if you don't have anything now, you might have something in the future. So a prenup's not because you have a lot right now.
that's right. And you've got to, as we talk, we need to talk about Bill Burns' book, Strangers, because a prenup is central to that. That'll be we'll do that in our next show. But you also can't predict the future. So you need to think about kind of all the possible options in the future. Like, what if I get poor and they get wealthy? What if I get wealthy and they get poor? What if they lose their job? What if they stay at home and raise children? You have to think about the what ifs when you're working out these prenups.
Mm-hmm.
But when you marry with nothing and you build an empire together, the law treats that empire as a joint asset. So just because you're the person doing the work, that's not magical. So Illinois and all these equitable division states, and this is true in common law, or not common law marriage, in the other states too, that have community property. Thank you. That have community property. It considers it part of the community. That is the joint property of the people in the marriage. And the concept of a marriage is a unified whole. So if you think about it like a partnership, like a legal partnership, the law looks at that like an equal partnership. There is no matter who does the work, the stuff that comes in, the property that comes in is equally owned by both people unless there's a prenup saying otherwise.
Right.
So the infidelity is a story here, but I mentioned the impact. It's not a legal lever for this case because he didn't file a fault-based case, but it is one factor among several in Tennessee to determine outcomes in the case. Again, it's not division of property. In Tennessee, it would be an alimony issue. Handling a case privately is a choice. It's a smart choice. We would recommend this kind of thing too. Alternative dispute resolution with a mediator, collaborative practice, potentially even private arbitration. There are ways to handle these cases outside of court to save a lot of money and maintain privacy. So the interesting asset here is not their home, it's the music, because these are things that continue to generate income for years. So past the marriage, this song catalog will have value. The music, who owns the song Save Me after the marriage ends? Does Bunny get a piece of streaming income for the next 40 years? After the break, we're going to lay out, after we go through a couple more stories, we'll lay out how those royalties and those issues are handled, at least here in Illinois, with like royalties, intellectual property, and a creative career built during the marriage. So tell us about the faked fertility story with Dwight Howard, Rahul.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dwight Howard is, for those who know the NBA or for those who don't know the NBA, Hall of Fame center, multiple time slam dunk champion, used to play for the Orlando Magic, then the Los Angeles Lakers, then played overseas for a while in China. And so here he is, this is about his marriage and then his subsequent divorce. So he married a love and hip hop Atlanta star by the name of Amber, whose stage name, Amy Luciani. And so they were married on January 11th of 2025. And they filed
her real name is Amy Luciani, or her stage name is Amy Luciani?
I believe her stage name is Amy Luciani. So she gave herself a stage last name too.
All right. Very good.
So they were married on January 11th of 2025, and they both filed in March of 2026. It was a race to the courthouse. We actually talked about this several episodes ago, and I think episode 55.
Okay.
So then subsequently on June 15th, a few weeks ago here from the taping of this show, Dwight Howard filed documents requesting a protective order against Amber. He alleged that they had a rocky relationship for years, and now claims, during their dating relationship, because their marriage is only about a year and a half old, and now claims she tricked him into the marriage with false claims about her fertility. The article we've linked, the TMZ article that we've linked, essentially says that, states his allegation, which was that she is on a crusade of lies and defamation against him. She's cost him many job opportunities, both probably in media as well as in, sports, and is spreading lies to his family, friends, and the mothers of his children. He's got several children with several other ladies.
Oh, great.
So she's making him look bad with them too.
Oh, geez. How long were they together before they got married? Is there any information about that?
it's the article essentially says uh
I was just curious.
yeah, the article doesn't really say when they started dating. We could probably look that up here
Yeah,
while
I'm
we're going
scrolling
through
around. I'm looking
this.
at a couple stories here
Yeah.
to see.
And essentially what she said, and so the interesting point here for us, I mean, the whole thing is interesting, but the legal issue here that's interesting is this whole lying about the fertility. So what this is referring to is that he alleges she told him she could have kids, but now he says she told him now that he cannot that she cannot have kids. And he is saying that her inability to have children that he has subsequently now found out about is enough to invalidate, as we call it in Illinois, or file for an annulment, is what he's saying.
Huh.
So that's the interesting thing here, right? It's fraud about fertility raises this annulment question, not just a divorce. So
Assuming he can prove it, yeah.
assuming he can prove it. So a claim that a spouse lied about something fundamental to entering the marriage points towards, as we call it in Illinois, a declaration of invalidity, or as the rest of the world calls it, an annulment. And this is a little different than divorce. So in Illinois statutes allow a marriage to be declared invalid where one party's consent to the marriage, so you agreeing to get married to somebody, was obtained by fraud, which in quotes I'm going to say because the citation from the statute, going to the essence of the marriage. So lying about one of these essences, or the ability to have children, is can be a classic textbook example of this kind of fraud. We talked about annulment in our previous episode 35,
Right.
and so this is sort of a
The
real life.
declaration of invalidity is the
Right.
magic term in Illinois. Yep.
Correct. Yep. And so so like you said, this is interesting because proving this can be very difficult. It's not, this can be a he said, she said about this, and she can say just simply enough, I never said anything like that. I've been completely truthful about this, and he's just doing this because he doesn't want to give me any money, because again, like we talked about previously, an annulment would be as if the marriage
Never happened.
never existed.
Right.
But there's still this financial entanglement that you want to unpack if you do have things that are owned jointly, but you were never married. So you'll have to untangle that.
There's no mention of a prenup in this thing, right?
There's no mention of a prenup in this thing.
Oh,
and
boy.
fraud can be extremely, extremely hard to prove. I've had so many consults. You've probably had a lot of consults where people say, so-and-so did X, Y, and Z, or said A, B, and C to me. So can I invalidate the marriage? First of all, you have like a 90-day in Illinois. You have a 90-day clock on these things from
That's
the date
right.
the fraud, quote unquote, fraud was discovered. So you can't wait a year and a half, for example, and then come back and say, well,
I discovered it.
she just told me yesterday she couldn't have a kid.
Right.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that. So you also need clear and convincing evidence, which is the burden of proof that you need, which is greater than by a preponderance of the evidence, but not as much as beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's these standards of proof, which we'll probably talk about on a different episode. And so this can be a hard sort of a claim for him to succeed on, unless he has text messages from her, for example.
And then you have the reasonable reliance right?
Yep.
Like you've got to be able, it has to be reasonable that you relied on the statement.
Right.
You can't be something outrageous or ridiculous that you relied on and got married, and it was like obvious that it's not true. Just a lie on its own is not enough.
Right. Exactly. And so then he gets this protective order as well, and you have different types of protective orders. You have a financial protective order. You have a protective order that tells people, it's almost like a gag order where you can't say things or quote unquote defame someone. I mean, defamation is a legal term, but nevertheless, you also have like an order of protection, as we call it in Illinois, which basically protects someone from ongoing abuse or fear of abuse. And so
in other states, they call it like a restraining order.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. So it can be pretty tricky, but it's also powerful in the sense that you get a lot of relief because it really restrains someone from certain conduct, which they would otherwise be free to do. But also, you can really blow up a case and really supercharge emotions. So, we always caution people, you can't come back from this one. You better be sold on this before you do it. Some things you can file, let it sort of, you know, just dwell for a while and see what happens. But one of these are taken very seriously, and
Right.
you have to make allegations that are very, very
Nasty, really.
nasty,
they're
aggressive,
they're
right?
rough. Yeah.
They're rough. So, which is going to really, piss off the other person, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and they can end up being kicked out of the home.
Yep.
They can't see the kids.
Mhm.
There's an awful lot of downside, and
Right.
that makes people very, very angry. And
Very
that's what
angry. Mhm.
Rahul's getting at is people will get super upset.
They'll get super
and
upset, and a judge
now
can get
you've-
upset too.
Yeah, and now you've
If-
thrown a
yeah.
hand grenade. I
Now
call them nuclear bombs because they
Yep.
they poison the case. If you need it, great. It's a decent tool, but
Yep.
if you don't need it, it's overkill, man. You're basically declaring war in that case.
Right. And then anytime I see one of those come into one of my cases, I always say, you know what? So much for being amicable. So
Right.
that goes out the window at that point. Well, I'm going to say all these nasty things about your client, but let's still sit down and try to work it out. Well,
Right.
I don't think so. So,
Yeah, exactly right.
it'll also, annoy the judge, because now that's one more thing a judge needs to now deal with. And frankly, judges want equity, but at the same time, judges are going to get annoyed if you're sort of slinging these allegations against one another, unless they're legitimate and really need protection. If you're just doing it to sort of throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks, that's the fastest way to lose the meta case, as they say.
Right. So there's a little bit more. I did some digging while you were talking about this story.
Yeah.
They were only dating a few weeks before they got married.
Well, what do we say about it? We've got our cardinal rules. We should create a rule book about these things.
Yeah,
So-
he should have.
Fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Yeah, he got fooled, I think.
You get the super long relationships before the marriage, the super long engagements, and then you have the super short I just met you, and this is crazy,
Yeah,
But here's my number.
Here at the I Just Want This Done podcast, we have some rules about relationships we talk about, because there's rules and regulations Rahul and I have come up with. One is, like he just said, the super long engagement, that's a red flag. The super short engagement is a red flag, conversely, or the same issue, really. It's like the first one is, why is it taking so long? The second one is, what's the rush? And then, now we have a baby claim that doesn't turn out to be true, I guess. Well, then it turns out she filed for divorce 6 months after they got married in July 2025. And then they reconciled at the end of 25, and then he's now filed. So
Yep.
tumultuous ain't half of it here.
Right. And so this is the polar opposite of the jelly roll. Let's keep this amicable kind of a situation. And then his statement about defamation, right? So defamation is not really a divorce issue. It's not something a divorce court looks at, is defamation, because if you think about it, really, every divorce case, which is nasty, can have, they're making me look bad, right? So there's that. If it's actual defamation, there's legal standards and factors that you need to prove defamation. And if you're a public figure, it's even more difficult. And
Yep.
And if you enter into a divorce and then you get divorced and you sign into some sort of a divorce agreement, which about 92% of people at some stage of litigation come to some sort of an agreement to resolve the terms of their marriage, that usually contains these terms that waive any other claims against the spouse. So for things that happen during the marriage. So you can't, if in such a situation, if you've signed one of these things, you can't go back later and sue that person for defamation, because you've essentially waived all claims that have arisen during the marriage. So interesting stuff. We'll keep tabs on it to see where this goes.
Thank you. That's good stuff. So next we got the rock stars on marriage number 3. It's Jack White of the White Stripes and Olivia Jean. Divorce number 3 fault grounds and a filing that talks about intangible assets. So Jack White's wife, Olivia Jeans, filed for divorce. There's a TMZ story linked in the show notes. And she hit him with divorce papers, claiming he's guilty of inappropriate marital conduct. So she's alleging fault. They were married in December 2022. And then the split date's the date of the filing. Then a direct quote from her petition for divorce says, wife would show that husband's guilty of inappropriate marital conduct, which makes further cohabitation unsafe and improper. She did not provide further details. In Tennessee, that phrase inappropriate marital conduct is a standard term used in divorce pleadings taken from state statute. She said in her filing, she's dependent on Jack's income for bills and needs him to pay support and put her on his life insurance policy. They were last seen together in New York in April. This is third marriage for Jack. Of course, he was previously married to bandmate Meg White, the original White Stripes. And there was a weird thing about that for a long time where people thought they were brother and sister. They never admitted they were married. It was a real strange deal. Eventually, they got divorced. And he was also married to a model, Karen Elson. So third time is probably not the charm. And a lovely comment from a reader kind of said what we're all thinking. A reader named Zen Master on the TMZ story says, maybe he should stop getting married. Duh. Probably true. One of the things we say at the I Just Want This Done podcast is the first time, okay, maybe. The second time, maybe. The third time, it's you. The third time, it's you. Either you're the problem or you can't pick them or both, but it's you. You get 2 cracks at it and then something's up with you. You need to go talk to somebody and figure out your deal, or just don't get married again. But the scoop on this is, he's built up a lot of assets. Now, mind you, apparently no prenup, despite this being divorce number 3.
We want prenup. We want prenup.
What is up with people, Jack? Jack White. Paging Jack White. What the heck, dude?
You should know better, man. Come on.
Seriously? Plus, I'm just saying, let me share the screen here. Here we go. Okay. I mean, they kind of look like they're both in the Munsters, Well,
he's like a guy you'll see in Vegas cosplaying Johnny Depp.
Oh, man.
From Edward Scissorhands.
I don't know what's going on. She's got an Elvira vibe here. But I don't know. Anyway, this story is pretty funny. This just kind of interesting. But the lovely couple's parting ways. So I don't know. Legal documents obtained by Complex, the source of all good divorce news, filed on June 3rd. Okay, let's see. It's still, we don't have any details on what was going on. And she's asking for attorney's fees, paralegal expenses, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty standard to ask for fees in these petitions, folks. That's not unusual. I love this quote from the Complex story. The couple joined in holy matrimony in April 2022. Holy matrimony. Wow. When they got engaged and married, they married on stage at one of its concerts at Detroit's Masonic Temple. They just performed the White Stripes song Hotel Yorba before White dropped to one knee and a minister walked on stage.
Why did he drop to a knee during a marriage? That sounds like he was like proposing.
Sounds like a combo proposal marriage deal.
All right.
I don't know. He was married to Meg White for all of 4 years, which I didn't know was that short. Married to Karen Elson. Oh, by the way, he kept her last name for the record, ladies and gentlemen. And Karen Elson from 2005 to 13. So that's the longest stint he's had is 8 years. Not a good track record. If any ladies are out there thinking about marrying Jack White, don't do a prenup because apparently he's okay with that. If you need his money, don't do a prenup and see how it goes. Good for you. He's apparently understand it's going to be a short run. Okay, 4 years or so, because that's kind of where he's averaging right now. So 20, he's got 4 years with White, 4 years with this wife. Okay, 8 with the other one, maybe. So you're looking at 5-6 years max on average for this guy. He's 50 BTW. So what else can we say about that? Let me look at my notes real quick. Yeah, they got engaged and married. You're right, Rahul. That's the story on stage during a White Stripes adjacent concert. Okay. So one of our other rules about marriage is if you're not taking it seriously at the wedding, you're not taking your marriage seriously. So a wacky performative thing at this concert is probably doomed, kind of like we talk about destination weddings and anything silly about a marriage. Take it seriously, folks. Let's see. There were 2 children with the second wife. I will not name them, but he had 2 kids with his second wife. And we are going to talk about our deep dive on intangible assets because this lawsuit claims an interest in his intangible assets. That means the catalog, publishing, the masters, royalty streams, all this stuff. Because, the music, there are some tangible things, but then there's, tangible assets would be physical things, cash, car, home. But then there's intangible assets, intellectual property, music, rights. The guy owns intellectual property rights to his band name and his concert production, whatever, T-shirts, logos, all these things, right? And the lawyer is signaling right on page 1 that they're fighting over the intellectual property because one of the biggest assets a musician has is the IP. That's code for intellectual property, folks. So that's the music, the writing. And with music, remember, there's multiple levels of rights to music. There's the writing credits, and you get paid for that when music is replayed or covered. People get paid when their music gets sampled, they get paid. There's a number of ways and then when music gets played, they get paid. So there's a number of sources of income that Jack has, that she's trying to tap into. Now we have an issue of the premarital catalog versus marital effort. So in our world, we're going to talk about Illinois. The White Stripes catalog was created in the 90s and 2000s, way before this marriage. So we would be arguing that is non-marital property. That is his property alone, not property of the marriage. What we're going to have to dig into, though, is what new work has he created during the marriage? And what new assets have been created during the marriage? So the line, that's where a prenup would have helped Jack, is clearly defining that line. Now his lawyers are going to have a lot of work to do to untangle all this stuff and show, hey, these assets were created before the marriage. These other assets were built after the marriage. And that's going to be the stuff that's in play. And then money he makes from performing during the marriage is marital property, because we're talking Illinois law, by the way, but I'm guessing that the other states are similar, very much the same. And that is your personal effort, your actual work product during the marriage is the property of the marriage. And that's in the form of cash earned, but also your income going forward, that revenue stream. It's really a maintenance or support issue for child support or alimony. So that comes into play. So again, that new work created during the 4 years, and then the money he's actually earned during the marriage from concerts, for example, rather than streaming or record sales from old records. So Olivia Jean is a recording artist, but she states she depends on Jack's income. So, since I don't know that anybody knows Olivia Jean very well around here, I certainly haven't heard of her, then she's not making the money that he is. So she has her own earning capacity and a smaller catalog. So Jack's probably going to say, hey, I own part of your catalog too, as some kind of an offset.
Right.
If it's really small, he may not worry about it. His lawyers might tell him, hey, don't even bother.
They might just walk away. Yep.
Yeah. But if it's big enough, it might be worth digging into, if only to give her something to think about. So
right.
As a bargaining leverage, right? So the way that you see this happen in non-recording spouses, let's say it's 2 people with pensions. We say, well, there's one bigger one, maybe one smaller pension. Well, they'll say, well, I'm going to take half of your pension earned during the marriage, the portion earned during the marriage. And then the other person turns around and says, well, I'm going to take half of the portion you earned during the marriage, as like a tit for tat thing. The life insurance ask is actually not unusual in our state. When you're paying support, the typical thing is that you're required to put them on your life insurance policy. The theory being that if you died, that spousal support terminates and they're left high and dry. So usually, while in Illinois, at least, while there's an obligation to pay spousal support, that person has to be on the life insurance as a beneficiary. You can slice that a number of different ways, but that's the gist. And that's why the lawyer's asking for life insurance have her placed on the insurance policy in the petition. Okay. Next, so this leads Rahul into this discussion.
It's a good segue.
Yeah. So can you lead into this, Rahul, and talk a little bit about this? I think it's a real interesting topic, and we like to speak to more complex assets now and then on our show. Our firm concentrates in higher net worth, high income, complex divorces. So we do like to be approachable and talk about issues that concern everybody, but occasionally we like to touch on some of these more complex issues.
Absolutely. And folks, we haven't been talking about musicians by coincidence today. Yeah, we haven't previously talked about it, but even today's episode isn't just a coincidence that this happened. I mean, there's a bigger sort of a picture. We are, of course, experts in show business now. So
that's right.
So we're very
we can't say we're experts in law because it's against our ethics rules.
We can't.
But we are experts in showbiz.
Exactly. And so
just ask us.
Exactly. Which leads us into our question. How does Illinois law account for or divide things like royalties, copyrights, creative career, essentially IP? What about IP during the marriage? What does Illinois law do with that? Because like we've been talking about throughout this episode so far with these celebrity divorces, especially Jelly Roll, maybe not Dwight Howard, but Jelly Roll and now most recently, with Jack White and
can I chime in briefly though to maybe put a word in for Dwight? If we imagine Dwight Howard has created a logo and a brand, let's say like Jordan did, right?
Oh, sure. Yep.
There is IP that a lot of these ball players have. They enter into deals to create a logo and they market their personal brand.
And they have a shoe that comes out just in their name usually.
Exactly. So it's possible that even a sports player could have IP, intellectual property too, and some type of rights accruing to that. I just wanted to mention that to tie it in.
Very good point. Yes, absolutely. So here's a question that nobody really asks us until they start going through a divorce, which is when a marriage ends, who owns the song? Jelly Roll created a whole catalog of music during his marriage. Well, who owns it? Currently, they're getting paid. He's getting paid. It's going into their sort of marital pot. And so every time it streams or it's on the radio or whatever the case might be. But once you're divorced, what happens to all that? And again, this is not just if you're a musician. You can have a YouTube channel.
Right.
Rafe, you got your book, which is IP. You have an online course you create. You have all kinds of things that can be considered IP. So just something that's not tangible, like you were saying previously. So what happens with this? So Illinois law, shocker, has rules. The statute talks about how this gets divided. Do you want me to keep going, Rafe? Or do you want to
I guess I can touch on this piece.
Yeah.
And so we touched on this before. Stuff created during the marriage is presumed to be a marital asset unless it comes from a non-marital asset. And we won't bore you with the details, but there are some exceptions. But generally speaking, property created or acquired during the marriage is presumed to be marital property. And you have to prove that it's the person claiming it's non-marital has to prove with clear and convincing evidence that it's not marital property. So the good thing for the person saying it's marital is they don't have to prove it's marital. They just have to make a very basic showing. They have to show like this company was
the marriage.
Yeah, this song was written during the marriage. This company was formed during the marriage, or this bank account was opened during the marriage, and that's really all they have to do. Then the other person has to bring in good proof,
clear and convincing evidence again.
Yeah, clear and convincing to show why it is non-marital. So that's important. And with music, we mentioned this briefly, but you have a couple different things being divided: the work itself and the rights to the work. So the work is really two assets. One is the work itself. The other is the rights attached to it, like streaming, licensing, make derivatives, collect royalties, control how it's used. And interestingly enough, Taylor Swift got in a battle with her publisher over the rights to her music and famously re-recorded a bunch of her earlier work on new albums because the contract she signed didn't prevent her from recording new versions and making money from that. So she essentially was destroying the value of her older work by re-recording new work, which she wasn't banned from doing in new albums. She's since acquired the rights back to her back catalog. But that just shows you these rights are significant and they can be different things. So, or they can be sliced into pieces. So a court can give, and this is also important in Illinois, and I'm sure this is true in other states, Rahul, the court doesn't want to destroy the asset.
Right. Or split the asset. Or, like you say, you own a house together, let's sell the house and split the proceeds. You can't do that with music, for example.
That's right. And we only have one performer. We can't have, the wife's not going to come on stage and start singing with Jack White, right? So we have to, the court is thinking, number one, I need to preserve the asset for this couple to maximize the value. Number two, I need to be fair and equitable, and I need to share value from the asset with the other party, because they deserve that. But we have to figure out who should be controlling the asset. Well, in this case, it should be Jack White. He's the musician. He's the guy that built this empire. We're not going to give her the music. So when the court's looking at this, the judge is going to say, well, I'm not going to give her the songs, even though that would be one way to distribute. Let's say he's written 10 songs during this 4-year marriage. Well, let's call it 40. He's written 10 a year. The court is highly unlikely to give her 20 songs writ large and give him 20 songs and call it a day, because she won't know what to do with them. She's going to fumble more than likely. And then it won't maximize the value, because you really want the creator to have that stuff, to publish it, re-record it, make different versions of it, play it live, whatever, and control it, because he's the one who's built that fortune around that. So similarly, when you have a family, when you have a business situation, the business operator is going to keep the company. Right. The court is not going to give half of the company to the spouse and say, you guys have to run it together now. Right. Because that's a surefire way to destroy the business. There's actually Illinois case law about that. There's a case I remember very well about a bar that they wanted to keep, the spouse wanted to keep owning it together. And the court basically said, we're not going to force these people to stay together in this thing. It'll destroy it. Now, that doesn't mean the person doesn't get value. So we have to value the streams of income that come from this stuff and what all these assets are worth, and then figure out a buyout effectively, or a payment system to say, okay, as money's earned on this music, Jack's going to have to account for it, show her how much was earned, and then split it with her. And so there are a number of ways that they can do this, but so valuing these assets is tricky, and then accounting for the income can be challenging, and he's going to have to disclose a lot of financial information. The other thing, Rahul, right, is a buyout.
It's a buyout. Yep.
The cleanest option, and if I were Jack's attorney, I would say, figure out a number that she can live with and get rid of her. Yep. And hopefully she's reasonable enough, and her lawyers are reasonable enough to say, we don't want to mess with this X number of years down the road. Let's take a dollar amount and just agree to it and be done. Now, that could be a payment plan over a period of years with interest, or it could be all in one shot if he has enough money. But leaving these people entangled is asking for a big hassle, and it's a pain in the butt, and will drive people crazy over time. Now, sometimes that's the only option, but with something like this, a buyout might be feasible.
And even for her, she might just want her money so she can leave. She doesn't want to wait every month, or however the periodic payment would be structured as, in case and hope that he pays on time, or there's no funny business, etc. So
let me touch on, Rahul, can you touch on this, the fact that the IP keeps earning what about the non-marital IP that keeps earning money? kind of the
Ye-
Jack White's problem here.
Yeah, right. So the White Stripes existed prior to the marriage, and you have
Seven
income.
Nation Army, baby. By the way, love it.
Yeah, there you go. So there's three things that can pull marital dollars back in. You have income earned during the marriage, but from money that predates the marriage from the catalog. So let's say, royalty checks that arrived from 2022 to 2026. You have increase in value during the marriage. So the catalog was created before the marriage, but as he gets more popular, his sort of catalog is getting more popular. So the increase in value of non-marital property. But the wrinkle, you could say, look, my 401k from before the marriage went up during the marriage, but that should be non-marital. Sure,
Right.
because it was passive, meaning you didn't have to do anything. It was growing because that's what the market forces do. Here, the argument would be him actively performing and getting better, getting a bigger star has directly contributed to the increase in value of his premarital catalog.
Right.
Therefore, it would be active and not passive. And Illinois statute, 503 A7 says, or whatever, one of the A's, it's in there, says that increase in value of non-marital property can itself be marital, where marital effort contributed to that increase.
That's a great point. And then, Rahul, aren't we getting into the layer cake argument where we're going to say, well, we have a baseline value of the catalog, right, from before the marriage, and then you're going to have proof problems. I mean, the wife's going to have to be able to show this gain in value was due to his efforts during the marriage,
right?
And then proving how much of that gain is from that is going to be tough.
It's going to be tough.
You basically have to show, well, it was worth X at the time we got married, and due to his personal efforts, it's now worth Y. So you get the difference between X and Y. That's a marital asset, theoretically divided by 2.
Right. And like we always say, right? It's like we always say, but wait, there's more. So now you have more. We're presuming here that all of this music belongs to him.
Right.
Rarely does music just belong to one person. You've got co-performers, or you've got co-writers, you've got
like
publishers.
Meg, Meg White. Meg may have owned some interest in the previous White Stripes music.
You may have a record label. You have an agreement. You might have an agent. You have all kinds of different people who may own a little slice of the action, as they say. So performance royalties flow through, all these different organizations, kind of these different pathways, and they get split. So either you say, okay, this person, so you might own only a percentage of the total revenue that comes in as income or as the asset, or if the intertwining is so much that you might now have to add a third party to the case to say, well, these people are all directly related to this asset, and so they need to be here. Like you have a house, a court can't make a third party do something unless they're a party to the case. So you might need to add them to the case. Like, most frequently, we see this where, a couple owns a house with one of the parents or with a third party, and to exercise the court's rights over the house, a third party might need it to be added to the case,
right,
in order for the court to be able to fully exercise its power, adjudicate it. So that could be an additional kind of a wrinkle in these things.
There's one more interesting tidbit about IP that I want to mention, and that is derivative works. So if Jack created a derivative of the original, let's say there was let's say there's a hit, Seven Nation Army, right? It's a hit song from the White Stripes days, clearly non-marital, but he creates a movie based on the song, or there's a film that's based on the concept in the song, and it is a new work, even though it's derived from themes in this music. Or let's say there's an album similar to Purple Rain, where it's literally a film made based on an entire album, and he does that based on his old music. There's a fair argument to be made that the film is a new item, even though it's derivative, that is a marital asset. So there are these issues that need to be untangled, and expert witnesses are used for these issues typically.
Like Saturday Night Fever, right?
Yeah,
With the
exactly.
Bee Gees.
You have
And,
the Bee Gees music, then you've got the entire film, and so
John
you have to
Travolta, yeah.
understand. Well, I guess like Quadrophenia for the Who, and there's a lot of bands that have done albums, but usually
Well,
they're
you have 8 Mile with
contemporaneous.
Eminem.
8 Mile with Eminem, and that came out sometime after. That was his music and film. But let's assume that Eminem had come out with that movie years later when he's married to someone else. Then they say, well, he's using his old music, and he would maybe claim, well, this is really all related to premarital stuff. And they said, well, not so fast. This movie's an entirely new asset. So that's maybe pulling apart what part of it is the old music, what value does that have, as part and parcel of the film, and what part of it is his acting and his new work that is marital. That's going to be tough to figure out. So we already talked about how to divide it. We talked about the tools. We have a buyout or offset. Sharing royalties is another way to do it. So as the income stream comes in, you share the stream of income that comes in. And then we talked about a buyout and structured payments already. But royalty sharing is a hassle, obviously, because you have to keep accounting for it long after. And it is a way to do it. And a similar thing that's done in cases that don't involve IP is when we have stock options in a divorce case that one person must hold and they can't be sold. Those options eventually get sold and cashed in. And in a lot of cases, we have what we call if, as, and when splits. So these are very hard to value at the time of the divorce, but they're marital. So what we do is the owner holds on to them. They stay in that company or whatever, they work. And then when they sell their shares or their options, they exercise them, they have to share half of the money with their former spouse. So that's sort of like splitting these royalties. There's a real world kind of cautionary tale here with the great Sonny and Cher. They got divorced famously, divided their assets in 1978. And decades later, a long time after Sonny died, his widow and Cher ended up fighting over about $1 million in withheld royalties. The lesson is that you can have a dispute over this kind of property. If you don't draft it carefully, you can end up in litigation down the road and postpone a solution and be miserable. So you really want to make sure the ownership, administration, and future interest language is correct the first time. So getting a skilled divorce lawyer to help you with this, that's familiar with these more complex asset issues, is crucial. So
Absolutely.
Do we talk about this listener question, Rahul, or do we move on to the next part?
I think we can I'll ask you the question. Maybe you want to keep it like 30-second concise answer so we can get it, just to kind of close the loop on this.
Because we walked through the law on this, but this is a related question.
So we've got a listener. We frequently talk about listener questions or reader questions. We have either a comment on our pod and on Apple, on YouTube, or we have the Illinois Divorce Support Network on Facebook, a private Facebook group that Rafe monitors and administers. Yep. And free to join. Yeah, it's a collaborative space for people to talk about questions, etc.
Yep.
And
anonymous to post. You don't
anonymous to post.
You don't have to have your name on anything.
Right. Exactly. So a question here: my spouse built a business / brand during our marriage. Do I get any of it? So the question really is, during our 9-year marriage, my husband started a YouTube channel and an online course business. It now earns more than his day job. It's all in his name and his LLC. I work full time and basically ran the house, so he had time to film and edit. We're separating. He says the business is his because it's his face and his name on it. Is that true? This is in Cook County, Illinois.
The short answer is yes. It was established during the marriage, so it's presumptively marital. So classifying the property as, it's marital property, regardless of whose name the LLC is in or whose face is on the channel. It's my face has to do with the artistic control. So the court's not going to give her the channel or split control of the channel. He's going to retain it. But he doesn't get to own all of the marital value. Her contribution counts, and her contribution at taking care of the home and all that is part of her end of it. So she's going to get basically half of whatever this thing is worth. She ran the house so he could build the channel. She took care of the family. What does she get? She doesn't get control, but she's going to get half of the proceeds. So he gets to keep the channel. She gets her equitable share of the value of this thing. So valuing it is tough. And then coming up with income streams, figuring that out also is part of the challenge. So it's likely going to be a buyout situation, in my opinion. So that's how I see that one.
Perfect.
So tell us about, we're kind of all dying to know about Goblintimacy.
Yes, Goblintimacy.
Goblintimacy.
Yes. So this is a Psychology Today article by the ever famous Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee.
Not the martial artist.
No,
this is
sadly.
Bruce Wiley. And so we have the article linked in our show notes. And so what is this, right? This article is about Goblintimacy, which means showing up to dates as the completely authentic you. You display the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in full display for everybody to see, rather than, your curated sort of a highlight reel of your life, like you might have on social media, which only shows the glamorous parts of it. You just show up and your true authentic self. And then the word Goblintimacy is a combination of what they call Goblin mode, which is a 2020. I hadn't heard about this before until today, but apparently it was a 2022 Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year, which was about rejecting carefully curated self-preservation. And so it's basically refers to behavior that is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, or greedy, typically in a way that rejects societal expectations and social norms. It represents a conscious decision to ditch curated, high-effort aesthetics in favor of basic comfort and unvarnished behavior. So,
like, this is me. So tough luck.
Yeah, you get what you see. Basically, is what they say.
Okay.
So upside, you clear out all the bad fits more efficiently. No one's wasting your time. There's this guy or this gal is who they are, unapologetically themselves, and keeps dates more relaxed, relatable. You're not trying to really be somebody you're not. But the downsides can also be difficult. You're disrespectful. You force, if you're someone, one of your goblin traits is to force intimacy. You might force intimacy and connection prematurely. You might dump all your flaws and baggage out, like he says, an airport carousel on the first date.
Nice.
And this is interesting because our clients, people we see encounter, are dating after a long marriage or a hard divorce. They come in with baggage. You have kids. You have an ex-wife. You have a story. So Goblintimacy says, stop hiding it. Lead with it. Let it filter people fast. They know who you are. You don't have to drop a bomb on them 4 dates in and create all kinds of issues. And, that could be very freeing for someone who's re-entering the pool and you're not worried about being someone you're not.
I think there's something to be said for this. I mean, I think it's good to be honest with people and upfront about who you are, and certainly not hiding things. However, he mentions in the article, it can go too far. So don't be disrespectful. Don't be dangerous. There are some basic expectations like wearing clothes, being reasonably polite. This is me quoting the story. Not spreading infectious diseases. That's lovely.
There you go.
Don't violate local ordinances. And I don't know why Bruce Lee says this. He's a wild dude, but he says, and not mentioning the possibility of an orgy unless prompted. Oh, my Bruce Lee. Where are we going with this? It's literally in the story. In other words, show you've made some effort for the date. And then he gives a story from his own experience. He remembered a date during his residency training where she showed up at the restaurant an hour late, didn't apologize, told me at the beginning I reminded her of her brother, proceeded to spend the entire date complaining about her job. It was clear she quickly wrote me off right away. So when the check arrived, I felt like turning to her and saying, here's your bill for the therapy session. Okay. I would say my thought on this is, and this is something I told my sons about dating. Yes, you want to be honest, but there's such a thing as being too honest too soon. So for example, dudes, you probably have a nerdy hobby, whatever it is. I like model trains. Okay. Don't talk about the trains on the first date. Okay. She hasn't gotten to like you yet. And stuff like that gives girls the ick, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even know you yet. So let the woman decide she likes you and then talk about your wacky hobbies down the road. So you might be into firearms, you might be into hunting, you might be into things that somebody might think are politically incorrect, or whatever it is. You're a cosplayer, or we
Yeah, I
had the
like
dating,
yeah.
we
Star
had the
Wars.
guy wearing the Star Wars outfits. There's such a thing as too much you at all at once.
Right. It's like a job
It-
interview. You dress up for a job interview. You might not dress up every day for the job.
Right. Right. So I think some of this, I mean, what is going to happen if you go all goblin mode is you might miss some women or men that would actually like you and would fit for you, but you put them off by being like too over the top with, this is me, too bad, like, okay, wait till they get to know you a little bit. So
She's gonna think you're the goblin and
yeah,
get away from you.
You don't want to be a goon. And also you do want to show the person you're relatively normal despite your hobbies and your interests. So we all know there are less desirable aspects of our personality. Let's not bring those out all at once in date number one. And as the millionaire date doctor, Mike Banovac, said, the reason for date number one is to see if there's going to be a second date. And he's right about that. And it's, by the way, previous episode, I think episode 11 of the pod, it's a great episode.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of great teaching points there, but be careful about putting people off with goblin mode would be what I would say. It's like,
Yeah. The takeaway is, authenticity is good. Boundaries are also good. The version of goblin intimacy, if you want to call it that works, is you got to be honest with who you are. Don't lie about who you are.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to be able to keep up that charade and what your life looks like. And let that filter for the compatibility, but you don't want to, like Bruce Lee said, make your date your therapist on night one, or just unload on them, talk trash about your ex, all kinds of stuff. So there's a line.
This is all my baggage.
I like to drink 6 beers a night every night just because that's what I do. You better not have a problem with that, or this is never going to work.
Yeah.
Maybe save that for date 3. Okay, maybe not date 1.
Right. No, it's a great story because I don't think we really talked about this. This is kind of an extension of the IRL dating, and kind of, it says in the story, a rejection against dating app culture and these overly curated profiles. And I get that. I think that's healthy, but you can go too far too and be like, tough luck, this is me. And if you don't like me, too bad. Well, maybe you should soften a couple angles here and there.
Yeah.
And, not, it's off-putting if it's like, this is me, tough luck. And basically what it tells people too is, I'm not willing to change any of my habits. Like, really, if this person was awesome and they said, hey, I don't like fill in the blank X habit that you have that you might be willing to change, better that you
sorry. What you see is what you get.
if it's sorry, okay, but there are some things that you might be willing to dial back,
right,
and alter because the person is worth it. So, but being super in your face tells the other person, well, okay, not only do I not love some of these traits, but they're basically telling me, tough luck, this is who I am.
This is who I am. Yep.
So anyway, if that's really what you want, you may over filter. So
exactly.
Good luck out there. We wish you the best.
Yep.
But anyway, thank you very much for watching the show. We appreciate it. Rahul, how can people find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Chicago Divorce.
And I am at Rayford Palmer on all the platforms, TikTok, X, everywhere, basically. You can find us on Facebook also. STG Divorce Law, very easy to find, both on YouTube, on all the platforms, including Facebook. And we have a special page for the law firm itself at STG Divorce Law on TikTok, X, and Insta. So we hope we see you there on those platforms. And share this show, share, subscribe to the show, please. Subscribing shows you care about the show and you're excited about this content and want to see more of it. Give us your comments, please. We do appreciate them and we read them. And give us your review also. Give us that multi-star review, that big time 5-star review. If you're on a podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, those reviews matter and those help us get noticed. And By the way, they help us get better guests because we're getting great guests now because the show's getting noticed. And to bring you better and better guests, you're helping us by promoting the show. So the more people watch the show and listen, we're going to get better and better guests, and the show just gets more and more interesting. So thanks a lot for listening and watching. We appreciate you very much. Have a great day. Let's be safe out there for